Hello, everyone. Welcome to BowTieSecurityGuy After Dark. With me today is Michaela Ricketts. She is a recruiter at HackerOne. And I wanted to talk to her about kind of why she got into recruiting, what the market looks like, and just overall what the current feel is of when you're looking for people. So, Michaela, first let's start with a little bit of how you got into this field and how you got into HackerOne.
Yeah, sure. Um, so recruiting, I don't think it was anything I ever set out to do, which is probably what a lot of recruiters would say. I started out in agency. I'm not academic, so I skipped university. Skipped school. I just wanted to go and get a job. And I was always told that I'd be good at sales. So when you're doing recruitment agency, it's sales. So I walked into a recruitment agency, worked there for about 7 years, and then decided to go in-house because I felt like I would have more of an influence and like the ability to actually make things better, like in the world of recruiting. Um, so worked in the Microsoft space, the identity and fraud space, and then into HackerOne. And HackerOne, I joined HackerOne. I had a couple of kind of offers on the table at the time, but I really loved all the people I spoke to. I loved the mission, and I just felt like it was a business that really aligned with what I believe in.
I think that's the biggest key is when I was looking for employment again, I really focused on what I wanted and what was important to me. The offer was important, but it wasn't the huge focus for me. It was like, I want to go to a place that has a mission I care about, that has something I'm excited about. And then with HackerOne, I really enjoyed your process overall.
Yeah.
Because I went through the interview process, and during the interview, I was told I didn't get it and I'm not moving forward, and here's why. That to me was the most humane way to handle this market humanly possible because I see so many, and I went through a ton of these interviews where I'll go through 6 or 7 interviews, and then it's like, we'll get back to you. And then you just wait and wait and wait. But when I was going, I think it was a director or VP role, I was talking to the hiring manager, and they're like, "Hey, I would hire you in a heartbeat if it was literally anything else, but I need someone who's actually done this before." And I thought that was just amazing. And it's really put a special place in HackerOne's heart for me. And I've always kind of really helped anytime a role gets posted and things, I kind of share it because I feel like that culture is one that people should really gravitate to, and that's one that you gravitated to. So I love the fact that you don't have any sort of formal education. I'm the exact same way. I was just like, hey, I'm poor and I can't afford college. I need to do something to eat. And I'm gonna go ahead and go this route. So, and this may be getting too personal, but really, who cares? Was it a situation where you're like, look, like school is expensive and like I have bills to pay, so I'm just gonna get into work as quickly as possible? Or was it an active decision like, hey, I'm just not a really academic person?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I'm going through it with my son at the moment as well, who's choosing college. So obviously we go from secondary school to college at 16 in the UK for 2 years, and then you have university. You 16-year-old me had no idea what I wanted to do. Like no idea. Like I just wanted to get out there and make money. Like zero idea. So I tried travel and tourism at college. I dropped out. I decided I couldn't put that pressure on myself. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to get a job and make money and go out with my friends and have a life. So that was what I did. And I did a couple of, pretty crappy jobs. But I actually think ones that gave me really, really good grounding, like to work with people. So, just server jobs, pub jobs, but it gave me that confidence and that grounding to be able to speak to anybody. So I am really thankful that I did what I did. And I just, having children that have autism and ADHD, I don't think academia is for everybody.
Oh, I mean, from one ADHD autistic to another, 100%, right? I can't sit in a classroom and be successful. It is literally impossible. It's not that I don't want to be there. And when I was going to school, it was quite fascinating, because I started off trying to go to regular school, and then I ended up being homeschooled for the rest of from sixth grade on. I never even, had a real high school experience. I was all homeschooled because I couldn't learn. I couldn't
Yeah,
function.
yeah,
Um, and at that time, now granted, I'm old, so like it was in the 90s and early 2000s, like they didn't care. They were just like, figure it out. You need to fit into a box. I think there's a great Einstein quote that says like if you basically teach a fish to climb a tree or whatever, it's always going to spend its life feeling it's stupid. It's
yeah.
it's all about finding that right thing. And I may have butchered that quote, and I'm sorry for anybody who's really big Einstein fans, but it really resonated with me because you need to find where you fit. And autism and ADHD are that specific spectrum that when utilized correctly, can be incredibly empowering and almost like a superpower when it comes to business. When you're going through hiring, and I know that there's like your diversity counts are way through the roof at HackerOne, how are you even finding those candidates? Like, is it an active search? Like, what is the thought process when you're looking for diversity or people who are neurodiverse? Like, do you actively seek kind of the non-normal candidates, or do they just kind of come to you naturally?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think we have to have that branding there to bring people to us, right? Because our searches, have to be inclusive to everybody. But it's about the way that we brand ourselves, about the way that we position ourselves to be able to have those people that are comfortable enough to come to us, during an interview process and say, I have ADHD. How can you support me during this interview process? And that's something that we put it in every single email we send out. We try do a lot to show that, we embrace all people, and respect all people, which is one of our values. But it's hard. It's difficult in recruiting because not everybody wants to identify themselves as well. My one bit of advice is do it because you can ask for reasonable adjustments, and reasonable adjustments mean that you could ask for things, questions up front. Could have somebody to support you. We could adapt a challenge. We could have less people on the interview. We could have, somebody who understands the nuances of being neurodiverse on an interview. So there's so much that we can do, and I wish more people would come forward and say that. And I get why they don't. My son, he's not even told his employer that he has autism because he doesn't want to feel different. But there are things that we can do to support people during the process. So that would just be my one tidbit of advice to anybody.
And I love that because I feel like interviews are designed specifically to destroy neurodiverse people. Like
It's
it,
tough.
it is it is if you hit any neurodiverse person with back-to-back questions, no matter how brilliant they are, they will fail.
Yeah,
And I try to explain that to people that you can't approach it like that. In our field specifically, has a lot of neuro spicy people, right? Like where you have to kind of have something different in your brain to obsess over the same things over and over again and expect
yeah,
different results, right? Like from a pen tester perspective, which is
yeah.
kind of the bread and butter of HackerOne, um, you literally will do the same thing 100,000 times on a multiple different sites and you expect different results. It is the actual definition of insanity. So it, I love that HackerOne does that. And I myself, when I do interviews, I ignore a lot of key signs. I ignore nerves because I don't
Yeah.
think that's fair.
No.
I will let people know, hey, I can tell you're nervous. It's
Yeah.
cool. I want you to succeed. I want you to absolutely crush it. And then the other thing too for the neurospicy is I don't ask any questions that are like stump the chump type questions. I want to know how your mind works. I want to know how you think. I want to know how you solve a problem. I don't care if you know how to do cross-site scripting. I can teach you technical. if you have the building blocks to be able to actually look at a problem and attack it full scale. And when you're hiring, and I've actually had you send people to me too, that you're like, God, this person is so good. They're just in their head. Their answers are really long and rambling. They're not doing what they need to. What's a piece of advice that you kind of would give to people that's like, let's say the people who don't make it through the recruiter interview, which I think is like the softball part, right? Like,
Yeah.
what is the like most common reason people don't make it past that recruiter interview?
Good question. It really varies on the role, right? So a lot of the time we're actually looking for, whether it's technical or like requirement fits for the job description. So, if somebody meets the expectations or, the role requirements, we're not trying to gatekeep that, like we're trying to get, people through that stage and matched with the company and with the roles. So, it would typically be, I would say, if we're talking about recruiter, actually a phone call or a video interview, I would say it's just not meeting the role requirements. When we're reviewing resumes, locations just not the right fit for the role. I'd say only about 10 to 15% are typically relevant for the role. But from recruiter screen, it's definitely just not meeting the actual requirements of the job. We are looking at whether they align with our values as well, but we also respect that diversity as well will add, different layers to the team. So we also don't want people that, are all the same. So but I would say definitely requirements for that.
Yeah, and that's what I try to kind of explain is that's a great thing that you mentioned as requirements is how often are you seeing AI resumes that meet everything and then you talk to these people and they I can just tell you for my last round of hiring, it was a good 80% were just complete lies. And that to me is insanity. And I probably got a little more boisterous with people than I should have, saying that you've actually taken a spot from someone who deserves to be here
Yeah.
because of your own greed. Like I get
Yeah.
it, things are tough, but like you're not gonna get past super technical people with a fancy resume. You're gonna get maybe a recruiter call back, but it's just a how often are you seeing that? And also even just like the recruiter team in general, is it common?
Yeah, all the time. I think that I've got a lot of feelings about this, and I don't necessarily think it's candidates' faults because you've got people
Me
out there,
neither.
recruiters, like companies, resume scanning companies, you know where I'm going with this, that
Yep.
will say that add these keywords, take parts of the job description, put them in your resume, and they're basically, yeah, you could probably get an interview with that, but you're not going to fool anybody. And I think, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So take keywords, put them in your resume. Like maybe a recruiter that doesn't know the role inside and out might be looking at keywords, but we can pretty quickly spot if you're not actually suited for the role. So, and the AI resumes, we see a lot. There's a lot of resumes that say very similar things as well. I'm not against using AI for
No, me
resumes.
neither. I think
You're
it's
only
a great
fun.
option. It is my starter, especially with autism. I have a
Mm,
really hard time starting.
starting, yeah,
I don't have a hard time finishing.
yeah.
So in AI has been the greatest thing for me because I will make the AI write it and then I will go back and I will make it mine. And
Exactly. And that's how
that's the
you should.
key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think so often, and it really depends what company you're applying to. If you're applying to like a mega corporate company, make your CV fairly corporate, right? But also, like, it's okay to inject a little bit of yourself in these resumes, like in your personal summary. I want to know what makes you tick. Like, I want to know what you enjoy. Not just that you're highly driven and motivated, what have you actually done that's going to bring impact to us. So I love to see a little bit of flair, like a little bit of difference in the resumes, but equally I am just looking at requirements, like do you meet the requirements? Can
Yeah.
I give you a job? That's essentially like kind of it from the resume review stage.
So, I mean, one of the things that I think is great is that HackerOne specifically looks at every resume that's submitted, right? Like, there's some great videos on Kayla Recruiter. You only put two out, but they're solid on your YouTube. So anyone listening, it's Kaylais Recruiter, and there's two videos that I thought were really good. And I wish there would be more, but the first one is kind of about that keyword stacking and stuff like that. It's it's not what people think it is. It's yes, there are some companies that basically know nothing about the role that are just hiring and churning and burning and looking for keywords and just grabbing the one with the most keywords. That does happen. But your companies who are looking for real talent understand the role and understand the hiring manager to be able to help them fill the role as easy as possible. Because that's really important too, is like what does the hiring manager look for and what is really important to them? So when you have that conversation with your hiring manager, what are some of the questions that you ask them specifically to kind of suss out what's important to them?
That's again a really good question. Scoping a role is the most important part, I would say, of our job. Getting everything right from the beginning, making sure that the hiring managers know exactly what they want, what is what's the perfect, candidate, but also kind of level down from that. What can we drop out? What could we train in people? Like, is that essential? Did you know this when you joined HackerOne? Were you trained in this? So it's really we'll ask questions around kind of obviously the day to day, like what are they going to be doing in this role? What does the ideal candidate like? Okay, well, if we can't find somebody with this experience, how does this sound? So and we use data to drive influence as well. So in these conversations, so if, okay, last time we were recruiting for this role, it took 20 interviews. Like, should this be mandatory in the job description? So it's really just about scoping out what they actually need versus what they want as well, and what the team needs. So, where are the gaps within the team? What will this role be solving? And we typically go on for about 45 minutes with these calls when we're scoping a role. But they're always iterated on as well. So say if I go away for a week and I'm looking for candidates and I can't find what we need, I'll come back with more data and more ideas, of what we can do to open the pool up. So it really evolves. But the best part is just getting all of that ironed out in that initial scoping call. We're very lucky that our hiring managers give us the time and give us the freedom and listen to us and our ideas. But I think that is the most detrimental part of any job that candidates will see is if the role is not scoped out properly in the first place. And then that has a knock on with the interviewings, with the hiring process, with stopping and starting. So it is really important.
And I feel like it's something that's missed a lot. And then I also will say that a lot of hiring managers don't know how to interview. Like, they don't necessarily fully know what they want. So I love the fact that you kind of help flush that out early on to help them through that process. Because just because you're a good leader doesn't mean you're a good interviewer. And
No,
I think people lose sight of that, right?
yeah, and the landscape changes so often as well. So, what might have been easy 2 years ago, isn't necessarily easy today in terms of recruiting or even acceptable. We're learning all the time about things we shouldn't say and we should say. But one thing we've done at HackerOne, my colleague Kaylee rolled this out with structured interviewing. And that's really helped because obviously all the managers had formal training. They know what they should and shouldn't ask. We have a catalogue of kind of repeated questions and not crazy long questions with three different questions in one. So, we're trying to keep it kind of repeatable. But it ensures that all candidates are asked the same questions. The interviews are designed up front, so everybody gets the same chance, and that's I think the most important thing.
That is exactly what I do. And a lot of people have questioned me on that, saying like, "Oh, well, why aren't you digging deeper on this? Why aren't you digging deeper on that?" I said, "Because it's not fair.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
The reality is like, could I dig deeper and could they give me an answer I like? Yeah, but they could also give me an answer I don't like, which is now an unfair advantage because nobody else got that question.
Exactly. Yeah. It has to be a level playing field,
Yeah,
and that, asking questions that are relevant to the role, not necessarily relevant to the candidate. Because otherwise, if you're doing it based off a candidate's resume, everybody has different experience. There'll
yeah.
be different interviews.
I ask a lot of questions that some people might be like, why are you even asking that? One of the questions I ask is, do you know how a telephone works? And they go, yeah, I know how a telephone works. And I said, explain it to me as if I was a child. And it's one of the hardest things for a technical person who has no soft skills to do.
Mm, yeah.
If you've never explained complex technical things to a non-technical person,
Mm,
you're going to have a problem with that. And that's a really, really important skill in cyber, especially now. For your job specifically and what HackerOne does, if your hackers just sent an email that said a bunch of technical jargon and you sent that and said fix your stuff, the person would be like, I have literally no idea what this
yeah.
means.
Yeah.
So
It's so important. And
yeah,
we see it a lot, people struggle to articulate technical, what's in their head with regards to, all the
yeah,
technical and into kind of everyday English. And we do see that a lot with technical roles. But I always, like I said, where I've reached out to you before, like practicing with people at
yeah.
interview, being able to explain things like to your family about what you do, or just working on how to kind of break that down a little bit, so that you can explain, really helps.
Yeah.
It's a tough
Well,
one.
a lot of people listen to me and they're like, "Oh, you're such an extrovert." It's like, dear God, no, no, I'm an introvert who's learned to pretend.
Yeah.
Um, I would much rather sit in my room, talk to no one, and wear headphones and listen to music than engage with humanity. But I've realized life doesn't work that way. So I've
Mm,
put in hundreds and hundreds of hours into soft skills.
mm,
And I think now with the job market the way it is, and I'll ask you this question, it's a bit of a loaded question. If you had two candidates who were literally identical, but one
mm.
had better soft skills, which one do you think would get the job?
It, yeah, the obvious answer. If you've got two candidates with exactly the same experience, and it does happen, it's normally going to be who aligns, with our values and what the team needs.
Right?
And that would be, soft skills would be considered in that. Um, there are nuances to that though as well. So,
There are.
how many people are the role going to be interacting with? Is it a siloed role? Is it a team role? But it is important, if
Yeah.
you could have two candidates with exactly the same experience, and the one that aligns with the company's values is going to be the one that gets the job.
And I will argue the one who aligns is the one who can easily and clearly articulate how
Yeah.
they align. And
Yeah.
that's something I think that's so important is I've talked to a lot of people and I work with a lot of people who are new to interviewing or haven't interviewed in years who are recently laid off, and they believe it's the market that it was previously. It's
Mm,
just simply not. They're not looking for the smartest person. They can teach technical, they can't teach you to fit.
yeah.
And it's really about that team fit overall. And I think HackerOne makes that very clear in all of their kind of breakdowns. Like, we want someone who has the skills, but like team fit is real important. It's part of it's your values all kind of align. And when you ask people like, hey, why HackerOne? And they've done no research on the company, um, what does that tell you about the candidate? Does that tell you that, hey, they're not really interested, or do you not really take that into consideration? Because I know when I was hiring, a lot of people are like, oh, I want to work for Global Payments because Rob works there and he's cool. And I was like, okay, well, that's not going to keep you long term. What are your thoughts when someone answers, they're just cool, or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's an element as a recruiter, there's an element of education, right? So if I'm reaching out to people to kind of try bring them into HackerOne, yeah, of course, I expect that I've just landed in your inbox. I need to explain, what we do and why you want to join us. for that initial call. But I do think, once they're latter in the stages, and depending on the role as well, for sales roles, before they go present to a potential customer, they would have researched that customer. So we kind of want to see the same, like in a process. But again, it is role dependent, and it depends whether we're reaching out or whether they're reaching out. But I always, if I'm looking at kind of customer facing roles, for example, I would always be looking for somebody who can give a good explanation of HackerOne, who can kind of read it, digest it. We don't leave people in the dark. We send everyone candidate information packs before their interviews, so they can talk about it.
You load them with tools, right? And
Yeah,
I got more than one email that's like, please review this before our call. Like
yeah.
it was very clear and detailed. That's like, hey, we want you to do the bare minimum. A
Mm.
lot of companies are doing things like making people kind of do work before they actually start. Like, hey, hack this or do that, or build this deck. I had that a lot when I was going for director roles. Hey, build us out a strategy. And I'm like, hang on, is that something that HackerOne does, or does it depend on the role, or what are your thoughts on people doing work before they're even paid for the company?
Yeah, so almost every role has some sort of a formal interview aspect. So whether that's for more senior roles, a presentation, technical roles, whether that's a technical challenge. So yes, like every interview process does have that. I do believe that they should, for us to be able to evaluate the right person fairly. I'm against things like, designers creating, something for the company before they start.
Yeah.
I'm there are, there are, it's such a fine line, right? Because there are some areas where I disagree with it, but also from the inside, I know that sometimes we need this to evaluate the best candidate. So things like strategy, like for senior roles, it's fairly normal to ask for kind of 30,
Yep.
60, 90 day plans. Um, it depends. It really depends on the role, and what you're presenting has to be relevant to the role as well. So, as long as what they're asking for is um, something that you're actually going to be doing in the role, then I think it's okay. But we're also, as a recruiter or as a hiring manager, we're never expecting candidates to spend hours on these. Like when we send everything out, we say we want you to spend like max an hour or two on this. Like they should be notes and talking points, not tons of free work.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I try to talk to people, especially my friends who are coders. They're like, oh, hey, build this app. And I'm like, no, 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 no.
Oh
You
no.
are working, you are
Yeah.
working for free at this point.
No,
I
and we
like
would never do that
Yeah,
either.
no, I like the way that you do it, which is kind of that high level, right? Like, hey, what do you want to accomplish 30, 60, 90? That's totally fine. A lot of companies now are doing kind of taking advantage, I think, of the market and knowing how much it is. And
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on a lot of these companies basically no longer really using a face-to-face recruiter and utilizing like an AI to ask questions? And then they record the questions in like the most impersonal way. And then those questions, the responses are sent back to someone for review. Like, what are your thoughts on that as a recruiter?
Yeah. So interesting. I always see things on LinkedIn that, where recruiters seems to be a pretty hated profession, right? So it's like, AI to replace you recruiters, like you won't be on the market for long. Um, I've trialed like a couple of these products, like not for HackerOne, like, companies coming to me
Just
and
for
asking.
curiosity. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I can see a use case for them in some instances, but I think you can never take that personal touch out of recruiting. Like,
No,
personally, if I was to go interview somewhere and they sent me an AI interview, I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't do it.
no,
Maybe I make
yeah,
my head around that for the future, but right now I want to talk to a person.
yeah,
I want to understand why you like the company. And that's really important because the biggest thing I always say to candidates, I frame the interview. So I'm like, I will tell you a little bit about HackerOne, and then I'll pause to answer any questions you have because I strongly believe interviewing is a two-way street. And if you take away that human interaction is not a two-way street anymore. And
Yeah.
I think candidates should have that opportunity to assess whether it is a good fit for them before you get too far down the line and waste everybody's time.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I will tell you the company I work for now, I literally never had them on my radar. Like I just wasn't looking for a gig in finance. Like it just didn't feel like it would fit me at all. Like if you would have said, Rob, are you going to end up at a Fortune 500 finance company? I would have most likely said, yeah, that's probably not going to happen. Um, because you associate finance with kind of stodgy, like, and that's just not how I operate. And the recruiter reached out to me and sold me on the company. And then I ended up not taking that role, but ended up later coming back for another opportunity, which is the role I have now. But it shows how important that first interaction is with the recruiter. And if your first interaction with the company is a cold, distant bot asking you questions, it's very odd and very uncomfortable, I think, for interviewers. And you have to I try to explain to people the mindset of people who've been unemployed for a while is basically like asking someone to triage themselves who's bleeding out in the emergency room.
I find it odd. I mean, I know that a lot of these systems do claim to improve diversity, but when they're reading things like body language without any context, I find that
Right.
really, really hard to understand. I do think AI has its place in
Me too.
recruiting. So
Yeah, for
we
sure.
we demoed a tool that, captures notes during interviews, and that's something that I would love to have in the stack. But I'm just not quite at the point where I trust AI to take over that human interaction.
I think that's the big thing, and I'm definitely not against AI. I'm like you. I think there's a place for it, and it's another tool in our toolbox. My concern is when we start allowing the tool to make our decisions.
Yeah.
Right? It's to a point where we're no longer thinking for ourselves. We're allowing basically the wrench to tell us what to do on our car. It's kind of a wild thought process that we're like, no, 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 the AI knows what's best. It's like, okay, well, we've proven, and I mean, your team, I'm sure, has identified, and your hackers have identified, hey, you can inject this into your AI model and you can do some really nasty stuff. And it's quite fascinating. Um, we're coming up on time. I wanted to just really kind of, what's your last kind of piece of advice for those looking for the market? I know as a recruiter, you probably get pinged a lot on LinkedIn. Do you look at people's LinkedIn? Is that factored in? If their LinkedIn's updated and relevant, or if they're sharing content, do those things factor into decisions?
Great, great question. Yes and no, if I'm really honest. So, um, LinkedIn messages, I love the messages I get. I can't keep up with them all. Outside of work, I'm a mum of three. It's very, very hard to keep up with the volume of LinkedIn messages that recruiters get, especially when probably about 80% of them are AI templates and they all say exactly the same thing. So, on that note, as a recruiter, I live within the ATS. Do not be scared of ATSs. That is my one biggest bit of advice to anybody out there because they are not an enemy. It's literally a virtual filing cabinet that helps us organize the recruitment process and automate it and streamline it. Um, Apply first to every role, then message the recruiter or hiring manager. So we can just quickly see your name, search, and then carry on the conversations in there. We can send you booking links from the ATS, etc. Um, LinkedIn, if you're really, really looking for a job, if you've been struggling, yeah, make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date. Make sure it's reflective of what you've actually been doing and all of your skills. Use that green banner, it's fine. Like, we're not judging you for it. I don't know which recruiters are, but it is okay to be looking for a job. Um, and I would say ask for help. Utilize like those referrals in your network, people that you've worked with before. If you're working with a recruiter, in one of your interview processes, Ask them for advice, ask them for help. Like we want to help you like through this.
Right. Yeah.
Like
No,
not your enemy.
it seems so simple, but a lot of people are just afraid. And that's what I tell people. It's like the worst case scenario is that they'll just say, "Hey, I'll get back to you later. I don't have time right now." I mean, that's it. But
Like,
look, yeah, no, I thank you so much for your time. Anyone listening, definitely check out Kayla's page. It's awesome. She shares a lot of great stuff. She shares a lot of the hacker roles, hacker one roles that come up, and then she has just a lot of content. Also, there's two videos. You don't really do your YouTube, but I will tell you the video on ATS is very eye-opening and gives a lot of great detail. So thank you so much for joining and everyone listening. Please subscribe, share, whatever, and good luck out there.
uh